Hi everyone, I'm so excited you're here. In today's video, I'll be sharing my favorite decluttering and cleaning tips that I've learned over the years. These practical, easy-to-follow ideas will make tidying your home simpler and more enjoyable, leaving your space feeling calm, organized, and refreshed. Have you ever walked into your home, looked around at the clutter, and thought, "Where do I even start?" I know that feeling all too well. For years, I used to think that keeping a tidy home meant exhausting weekends filled with scrubbing, sorting, and never-ending piles of laundry. But over time, I discovered it doesn't have to feel that heavy. Small shifts, little tricks, and a kinder approach to yourself can completely change the way you experience your space. That's exactly why I'm making this video. My goal is to share not just practical cleaning tips, but also the mindset shifts and simple habits that have helped me create a home that feels lighter, calmer, and more intentional. If you've ever struggled with clutter anxiety, procrastination, or the guilt of letting things go, you're not alone, and these methods truly can make life easier. Everything I talk about today I've personally tried, and I've seen the difference it makes. So grab a cup of tea, settle in, and let's walk through these tips together. And if any of them inspire you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. I used to think decluttering always had to be a big project, the kind that would take an entire weekend and leave me exhausted. But over time I realized it doesn't have to feel that way at all. When I break it down into little steps, it becomes so much easier to manage. Sometimes I only focus on one drawer, one shelf, or even just a single bag. It might feel small at the moment, but those small efforts build up, and I find myself feeling lighter and more motivated with every little win. Another thing I've noticed is how much the space itself can work for or against me. If I leave a corner empty and intentional, it stays calm and inviting. But if I let clutter gather there, even once, it quickly turns into a pile that nags at me every time I walk by. That's why I try to set up my home in a way that makes it easier to stay tidy, giving things a proper place, and resisting the urge to fill every surface just because there's room. One trick that has really helped me is using a timer. I'll set it for 10 minutes and tell myself, "Just start, you don't have to finish everything." The funny thing is, once I get moving, I usually end up doing more than I expected. The timer takes away the pressure and makes the task feel more approachable, almost like a little game instead of a chore. I've also made what I call my flat surface rule. Tables, counters, desks, they're all magnets for clutter. If I'm not careful, they get covered so quickly. So I've made a promise to myself that I'll keep them clear. When I notice something sitting out of place, I take a moment to deal with it right away. That one habit alone keeps the entire room feeling more peaceful. There are also times when it's hard to let go of things even when I know I don't really need them. That's when I turn to my 90-day box. I'll put those maybe items in a box, seal it, and wait. If I don't reach for them in 3 months, I know they aren't serving me anymore, and it becomes easier to part with them. And perhaps the most freeing shift for me has been changing my mindset. Instead of asking what I should throw away, I ask what I truly want to keep. That small change makes decluttering feel more positive because I'm creating a home filled with only the things I love. Tomorrow, I'll reveal clever cleaning tricks and time-saving hacks that everyone online raves about, methods that make keeping your home sparkling much easier than you think. You won't want to miss this video filled with practical tips that are surprisingly simple but incredibly effective for a cleaner, more organized space. Sometimes when I look around my home and see the little messes piling up, it can feel overwhelming. There are moments when I think I don't have the energy to deal with all of this today. But then I remind myself that decluttering doesn't always need to be a marathon. That's when my favorite little trick comes in: the timer method. What I usually do is set a timer for just 5 or 10 minutes. It sounds so simple, but it changes everything. Telling myself I only need to spend a few minutes makes the task feel less intimidating. It removes that heavy feeling of having to do it all at once. And more often than not, once I start, I find myself naturally doing more. 10 minutes of folding laundry might turn into 15, or a quick tidy up in the kitchen might flow into wiping the counters and sweeping the floor. The timer is just the push I need to get moving. This method has also helped me break the habit of procrastination. I used to delay small chores because I told myself I'd do them later when I had more time. But the truth is that perfect time rarely came. By limiting the effort to a short burst, I no longer wait for the right moment, I just begin, and that keeps clutter from getting out of hand. Over time, these little sessions have become part of my routine. I'll often squeeze one in while waiting for the kettle to boil, or before heading to bed. It's surprising how much can be done in just a few minutes when you're focused. And slowly, these tiny pockets of effort add up to a cleaner, calmer home. For me, the timer method is more than a cleaning trick. It's a reminder that progress doesn't always come from grand efforts. Sometimes it's the small, consistent actions that truly transform a space. And I love knowing that I can keep my home feeling cared for without feeling drained or overwhelmed. Speaking of making things easier, the next step is something I rely on almost every day. I've noticed that in my home flat, surfaces are always the first places to collect clutter. The dining table, the kitchen counter. Even the top of my dresser. They all seem to attract random things throughout the day. A piece of mail, a water bottle, a hairbrush, and suddenly, the whole surface looks messy. That's when I realized I needed to create what I call my flat surface rule. The rule is simple: keep flat surfaces clear. When I see something placed there, I deal with it immediately instead of letting it sit. At first, it felt like a small, almost insignificant change. But very quickly I noticed how much calmer and more spacious my rooms felt. Walking into the kitchen and seeing a clear counter gives me a sense of peace, almost like a deep breath after a busy day. This habit also prevents messes from snowballing. I used to let things sit for just a little while, telling myself I'd put them away later. But later never came, and one item turned into 10. Now I remind myself that it takes only a few seconds to put something in its proper place. By acting right away, I stop clutter before it even has a chance to build. I'll admit it took some practice. There were days when I felt too tired to bother, or when I thought, it's just one little thing. But every time I stuck with the rule, I was rewarded with a tidier, more inviting home. Over time, it became second nature. My family even started to notice, and now they're more mindful about leaving things on the table or counter. For me, the flat surface rule isn't just about cleaning, it's about creating an environment where I can relax. A clear space feels lighter, more open, and it instantly lifts my mood. It reminds me that taking care of my home doesn't have to be overwhelming. Sometimes it's the simplest rules, like keeping surfaces clear, that make the biggest difference in how a home feels. Once I got that figured out, I realized there was another trick that made the process even smoother. I used to think that every corner of my home needed to be filled, whether it was with decorations, baskets, or little things I thought I might need one day. But over time, I realized that empty space isn't wasted space. In fact, it's the secret to keeping a home feeling open and calm. That's why I've started to let my space work for me, by intentionally leaving certain areas clear. When I keep a shelf or a corner empty, it creates a natural pause in the room. It feels lighter, and there's less temptation to pile things up. Before, if I had an empty spot, I would immediately think of how to use it. But now I see it differently. An empty surface isn't waiting for clutter, it's reminding me to breathe. I've also found that arranging my home in ways that make tidiness easier is a real game changer. For example, I keep a small tray by the entryway for keys and mail so they don't scatter across the table. In the kitchen, I've organized drawers with dividers so everything has its place. These little systems reduce the chances of clutter building up because the space itself guides me to put things where they belong. One of the most surprising things is how this shift has changed my daily routine. I don't spend as much time hunting for items or stressing about messy corners. Instead, my home feels more intentional, almost like it supports me instead of demanding constant effort. Even my family notices that it's easier to keep things tidy because the layout encourages good habits. Creating a home that works for you isn't about perfection or strict rules. It's about designing spaces that make your life easier and calmer. Sometimes that means leaving a corner beautifully empty, and sometimes it means adding just the right storage solution to prevent clutter from sneaking in. For me, it's a gentle reminder that a well-loved home doesn't have to be filled to the brim, it just has to feel balanced and welcoming. That little habit makes such a difference, and it leads me right into the next one I rely on. There are so many times when I hold something in my hands and wonder, should I keep this or let it go? That moment of indecision can feel heavier than the clutter itself. I don't want to throw it away just in case, but I also know it's only taking up space. To ease that pressure, I started using what I call the 90-day box, and it has made such a difference in my decluttering journey. The idea is simple. When I'm unsure about an item, I place it in a box and seal it. I don't throw it out right away. Instead, I give myself 90 days. If I don't reach for the item within that time, it becomes clear that I don't really need it. At the end of those 3 months, the decision to let go feels much easier, because the proof is right there. I've lived just fine without it. This method has been especially helpful with sentimental things, or items I felt guilty discarding, like clothes I might wear someday, or gadgets I thought I would use more often. By giving myself that grace period, I take away the stress of making an immediate, permanent choice. It feels less like losing something and more like giving myself time to see what truly serves me. I remember one box I filled with scarves, kitchen gadgets, and old notebooks. 3 months later, I couldn't even recall half of what I had packed inside. That was the moment I realized how powerful this method is. It showed me that I was holding on out of habit, not because those things had real value in my life. What I love most is that the 90-day box turns decluttering into a kinder process. Instead of forcing myself into quick decisions, I create space for clarity. It takes the emotional weight off and helps me focus on what I actually use and love. And in the end, my home feels lighter, not just because of fewer items, but because I've released the guilt and uncertainty that used to come with letting things go. That's one way I keep the mess under control, and the next one is just as practical. There was a time when I felt like clutter wasn't just in my home, it was in my schedule too. Between work, family, and daily responsibilities, I often found myself running from one task to another without a clear plan. That stress would spill into my home, making it harder to stay on top of cleaning and organizing. It wasn't until I started using a shared family calendar that I realized how much time management connects to keeping a tidy home. One tool that has helped me is the Skylight Calendar. It's a simple digital calendar that hangs on the wall where everyone in the family can see it. I love it because it gives us all a clear picture of what's happening each day. Instead of having schedules scattered across phones and sticky notes, everything is in one place. Just like how a tidy countertop makes the kitchen feel more peaceful, an organized calendar makes our days feel calmer and less chaotic. I noticed that when our time feels organized, our home naturally feels more organized too. For example, if I see that we have a busy week ahead, I'll plan small decluttering sessions in advance, maybe just 10 minutes in the evening. When dinner times, appointments, and chores are clearly laid out, there's less rushing around, and I actually have more energy to keep up with tidying. It also helps with teamwork. My family can see when I've scheduled cleaning tasks or when I need help with certain chores. Instead of me constantly reminding them, the calendar does it for me. That shared responsibility keeps clutter from piling up because everyone knows what needs to be done and when. What I've learned is that organizing time and organizing space go hand in hand. A home that runs smoothly isn't just about clear countertops and empty boxes, it's also about creating routines that support the lifestyle we want. Tools like the Skylight Calendar remind me that decluttering isn't only about physical stuff. It's about reducing the mental clutter too. And when both are in harmony, life feels so much lighter. I love how simple that feels, and the next method brings the same kind of relief. I'll admit, one of the hardest parts of decluttering for me has always been deciding what to let go of. I would stand there holding an item, asking myself if I should keep it or throw it away, and the guilt of possibly making the wrong choice would weigh me down. That's when I discovered a gentler approach that completely shifted my mindset: reverse decluttering. Instead of asking, "What should I get rid of?" I now ask, "What do I truly want to keep?" This simple change of perspective makes all the difference. Suddenly, the process feels less like losing things and more like curating a home filled with belongings that actually matter to me. It's a positive focus, and it makes the decisions feel lighter. I remember trying this method in my closet. Rather than pulling out what I didn't wear, I chose the pieces that made me feel good, comfortable, and confident. Once I gathered those, the rest of the clothes sitting untouched became easier to part with. It felt like I was celebrating the items I loved instead of punishing myself for keeping too much. This approach works especially well for sentimental people like me who tend to hold on just in case. When I focus on what stays, I'm reminded that my home deserves to be filled with things that truly bring me joy, not items that only bring guilt or clutter. And honestly, I don't miss the things I let go of, I barely even remember them. Over time, I've noticed how freeing this method is. My home feels more intentional, and I feel more connected to the things around me because each one has earned its place. It's like building a collection of favorites rather than living in a storage room of maybes. Reverse decluttering has taught me that letting go doesn't have to be about loss. It can be about choosing abundance, the abundance of space, peace, and love for the things that genuinely make life better. And in the end, that shift makes keeping a tidy, welcoming home so much more natural and joyful. So there you have it. 7 simple habits I lean on every single week to keep my home feeling light, calm, and clutter-free. What I love most about these methods is that they don't require huge amounts of time or energy. Instead, they're gentle little shifts, like using a timer, keeping surfaces clear, or giving yourself permission to wait with a 90-day box that slowly build into powerful habits. When practiced regularly, they turn tidying from something heavy and overwhelming into something natural, almost effortless. If you're someone who often feels like clutter is stealing your peace, I want you to know you're not alone. I used to feel the same way, like no matter how much I cleaned, the mess came back faster than I could keep up. But once I learned to break things down into smaller steps and focus on what I truly want to keep in my life, everything began to feel so much lighter. And the best part, these small wins don't just tidy your home, they also clear your mind. If you'd like even more inspiration, I have another video where I share genius cleaning hacks everyone online can't stop recommending. And before you go, please like, share, and subscribe because you deserve a home that gives you space to breathe and the calm you've been craving.